Hello, welcome back custom car fans. Thanks for joining for another episode on BK's Build. Bit of a change of scenery today. As you can see, we are in the paint booth as this is quite a coatings heavy episode today. Don't worry if you're more of a fabrication fan, we've got a little bit of something in there for you as well. So let's get straight into it. Right, I want to cut a little plate, well, a rather large plate for the AC box. This is going to be the lid. Quicker than cutting that by hand. Carrying on with this panel, now that I've got it cut out, I have marked out for some bead rolling in here, and I'm going to use this central section as my plane section to enable me to fold these two sides like that without damaging whatever I roll into here. If I then decide afterwards, I could probably put a straight bead through because my bead roller has a very deep throat. One down, one to go. This one's going to be a bit trickier because I'm going to end up a lot more swing, so I just need to check, yeah, I can get out of the way of that. Yep, pretty happy with that. Came close on one of the corners to ruining it, but not close enough, salvaged it. Little hack, I wanted to achieve this angle because this sheet is obviously going to bolt to that to be the lid. So given that this is a magnetic brake, that sits on there, and then when I've activated the magnet, I can just visually line that up and get it pretty close. Same again. Oh yeah, that hack is good. Oh, the cover's shaping up now, starting to look like a hedgehog with all these clecos in it. I've just got to weld one more piece of angle iron in the back here so I can retain the bottom edge, and then I can make a side panel, grind off these welds, fit that on, and then tap all the holes, and I have a bolt-on cover for the AC which goes up in here. I've marked through the holes that I need to plug weld through, all up in here. So now I need to take the cover off, and then I can bare metal where the welds are going to be, put it all back together and zip it up. One of the best things about this machine is that the quick release on it means you don't have to count the number of turns on your tension. So I've just left this set up from the last panels, and this should be exactly the same. Let's start on that back edge. There we go. Holes, time for holes. Oh yeah, even though it's got the temporary Cleco fixings, that's looking really slick. So it's just a few holes to put in here for the heater hoses going in and the aircon hoses going in. But at the moment, because the chassis is not underneath, I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to route them. So I will leave that until later. But for now, these holes are all tapped. It's all basically sealed up so that it draws air in through there. And then it goes through the aircon unit, which is at the top, and blows it up and into this bit, which then has the vents for the dash to demist and warm up the occupants. It is coatings time, people. So unfortunately, it is time for Mr. Tally-Tubby here to take a little vacation for 5 minutes, well, 5 hours maybe, and get him out of the way of the overspray while we get some paint on. I have blown it all out, wiped it down a little bit, and now it's time to get some sheeting over the outside of the shell. Now for time saving, what I'm looking to do here is mask off the outside of the vehicle, also mask off any of the insides that don't want any paint going on them, and then I'm going to try and hit the inside of the vehicle, the underneath of the vehicle, and the dash area and the engine bay, all with one set of masking, not having to do too much in between. It should work fine because the van is not exactly a show paint job, so we're looking to really just protect everything, seal it up, and I've got to age in some of the paint to make it look old, like on the dash. You know, what I don't want on the dash is it to look brand new when everything else is 51 years old. You got to keep it caffeinated. It's all masked up, papered up, sheeted up, ready to go. So I'll give it another blowout now, and then I will get on with the epoxy. That will need to go off for an hour or two, and then hopefully that'll be dry enough that I can go in and start the seam sealing process. I'm going to go with doing the inside and the underneath all in one go. It's a little bit of a challenge, but I think it's going to be the quickest and most efficient way to do it. So let's get on with it. Here we go. More paint, more paint, more paint. The epoxy's all done. That's spectral under 385, I think it is. So many numbers, you can never remember which one. But it's a great product for this. It's a wet on wet product, which means we can seam seal over this once it's touch dry. We can put our top coats over it without the need to sand it. The problem with sanding something is, one, it's more labour time, but also when you've got a thin coating like this over the bare metal, the chances of you rubbing through in places are very high, and then it kind of defeats the object of having that epoxy encapsulating it all. So I'll let this dry, and then we're on to seam sealer. Well, it looks a bit like a teenager's bedroom when his parents go out, but it's all seam sealed up. So I've just free-handed this rather than putting tramline masking around every single seam. And that's basically because it's going to get raptored, so you don't need to be quite as neat with it. And also, it's then going to get covered. I still try to keep it fairly neat, but the difficulty we've got in some places is that we're going over some pretty rough, unneat old seam sealer and then having to stitch in ours with it. So in some respects, going freehand makes it all a bit more uniform rather than a real contrast between janky old stuff and super neat new stuff. So we'll let this tack off. I'll get it up in the air and do the underside now while that's tacking off, and then it's time to shoot some Raptor. Pretty tricky to match such a nailed old flat matte colour, and it's a very strange colour. It's kind of beige, mushroomy, but with a bit of pinky red to it. But I think that's going to be close enough, given that this is going in Raptor as well, which will change the colour slightly again. And then I'm going to age it up over the top. So it's not bad. Good old Raptor again. So I've chucked some hardener and my mixed up base coat tinters in here. I've left out the thinners and the like binder element to that. Brand new gun with this kit. Let's go, shake it up for 2 minutes and on we go. And now the underneath. Well, would you look at that? Raptor coming through with the goods yet again. So this is a full texture through a Schutz gun. That's like an underbody coatings gun. And that is perfect. It looks hard wearing. It is hard wearing. And it's the perfect choice for these areas here. It certainly improves the old rusty knackered area and ties in the new area pretty seamlessly as you're going to get on a vehicle of this age with such a mix of bits being done and left original. In the cab here, Yeah, that's good, hey? I'm dead pleased with that. So next up will be the dash. So I've kept some of the colour that we used in here, the base coat. So I'll use that to paint the bits on the dash that we've done, tie that all in, and then I'll age that up a bit to blend it with the old original paint. And likewise in the engine bay here, I'm probably going to paint blue over the epoxy and then deliberately age that up. Oh, and I also did the underneath. So I've gone with a bit of base coat here with a bit of hardener in because it'll go off as matte and thin looking as the original coatings in the van. So hopefully that was the right choice. It looks pretty good. It's hard to tell on phone camera, isn't it? But what I'm going to do now is do the engine bay bits. So I need to get a bit of blue and get that on there. And then tomorrow I will get some metal filings and some salty water and age it all up. I've got some blue base coat laid down, and then I've just flicked a little bit of a lighter colour into that to give it a little bit of contrast, because there's a lot of white overspray on everything from this vehicle because I think the outside's been painted over the blue at some time. So a little bit of white. It looks wrong at the minute and really fresh, but that's because we've got no brown, dirt, rust, etc. But this will be a good base for aging that up tomorrow. I am all about recycling, and I'm going to recycle some of this van when I'm doing this paint work. And here we have some of the van. Now this is a bag of rust. And I'm going to use it to make the van rusty again after having repaired the rust. Doesn't really make sense, does it? Well, it does in here. I need to age this paint up a bit. This paint's a little bit too fresh looking, a bit too bold, as you can see. I'm happy with the sort of basis of it, but this is going to come in handy. Watch what I do now. So what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of this rust, and I'm going to just say rust. It's like metal filings, bits of crap, sweepings basically. And there's a decent amount of protective paint on here, so don't worry that I'm prematurely destroying this vehicle, because the actual rust on the vehicle is far more along the process than this will be. This is basically just sitting on top of the paint. It's all part of the paint process. Well, they're ruining the paint process. Let's make sure there's plenty of water on here to accelerate this. And then a bit of salt, that'll do it. I need to go and get a bit of salt. Now we should find that tomorrow morning this will already look a lot older with some rust forming. It's amazing how quick, once you've got the metal in filing form and then you add some salt and some water, amazing how quick it goes brown. Of course, it was critically important to mask off these epic stickers. One of them from a ski resort, which hopefully indicates some sort of history of this. And then the other is the manufacturer plate. Oh, this is good. I love this stage of a build, bolting stuff back on. This is one of my favourite little custom tricks, this shifter as well. Oh, it's tricky to line that up through the camera. Right, couple to do underneath from the outside. Taking this opportunity to sort a few bits for coatings. As you can see, this is still bare steel. So I think what we're going to do with this, I think it will look good in Cerakote. And equally, this plastic is pretty horrific. It's quite out of place in a custom car like this that's 51 years old, but it's essential to hold the pedal and the servo bolts on the back, the master cylinder, etc. So I just want to make it look slightly more in keeping, and I think again Cerakoting this in a metal looking finish should be pretty cool. And while I'm at it, the bare metal double D steering column sections need doing as well, as does this top section which we've welded the splined quick release boss on. They'll get Cerakoted as well, because that's a nice thin coating that will still go into the UJs without causing any issue there and stop these from rusting up. So I'll strip this down and then we can do that too. Might not be able to see it in the video, but what I tried to do with this was go for a slightly random antique sort of vintage look by going bronze Cerakote first and then putting a very thin coat of black over the top. And my aim for that was just to make it look a little bit older, and also so that when it starts getting wear on the pedal, you almost get the bronze showing through, a little bit like patina on the bodywork of a vehicle, where you start seeing the primer and the metal coming through. And actually, I think it worked out all right. You can just see here some of the bronze coming through, showing through. Yeah, that's shaping up super cool. I'm dead happy with how that cab area is coming together. You wait until you see the seats in there as well. So we're focusing on quite a bit on coatings in this episode, but a lot to do with coatings is the prep. Probably about 95% of it is prep. And what I've done here is I've just put a little bit of filler in the corners that have been welded, just to make sure that any little pits, grinder marks, little divots have been filled up. I've then DA'd off the flat faces to get that nice and smooth. And now I'm just going to take a hard block and gently whiz round the corners to add the radius back in to make sure they are looking perfect. We'll then go on with some epoxy and some textured Raptor on these, fine texture through a spray gun, just like we did on the chassis. I think it'll look absolutely perfect on these dash parts. Right, back onto the front panel. This is the ducting that we made on the front panel. You can go back a couple of episodes and watch how I came up with that idea and made that. There's a few little things I need to do to it before it's done. I need to rivet it together, but more importantly, I need to create some deflectors in here to basically make a little bit of a dead zone in there. Now, that's not a dead zone as you might have heard people talk about in relation to an intake manifold, which can cause poor running, bog down on acceleration. It's a dead zone of air. It's basically just a slow section where the air will slow down enough or hit an object and then have to divert. And that will cause the water in the air when it's raining just to drop out, and then we can collect that and run it out the engine bay for a tube. So let's get into it and I'll show you what I'm thinking as we go. I haven't got a preconceived idea of how to do this. I'm just going to roll with it basically. So let's start. Does it fit? That's the question. I've taken the top sheet off. I don't know if that could have worked out much better, to be honest. Look at that. I can't really see it. Let me come around. Big reach. Yeah, that's real cool. I'm going to clean up these parts now, get some acetone and take off the permanent pen, degrease it, prep them up, and then it's time to reassemble it and buck the rivets. And then we can get this in the booth and get some coatings on it. So just have a quick coffee to keep me going. EV and hybrid vehicle training mug from the local college. It's definitely not my cup of tea. I'm more a caffeine and burnouts kind of guy. I love this part of the assembly process. Start seeing it all come together. It's all keyed up. It's all ready for paint. I've wiped it down a couple of times with some acetone. Needless to say, I'm going to have to do it a couple more times when it goes in the booth, just like everything else that's in there, ready for the Raptor. It's important to deburr all the holes when you're doing this to make sure that the rivets don't snag up. So I've already done that. Ah! I'm dead happy with that. That looks so cool. That's a really nice, lightweight solution to a problem. Adds a detail to the front of the vehicle. All round, spot on. Right, let's get that in the booth. Well, the game here when hanging all these parts up is to get the panels in a nice orientation for paint, so you can get all around them, no obstructions or as little obstructions as possible, with as few pieces attached to the panel that could cause witness marks and a lack of coating in certain areas. Also, you don't want it flapping around too much. That's probably not too bad. I can work with that. And you also want to try and orientate them in as close to the orientation as you see them on the vehicle, so that you can make sure you get that bit the best. And then if there are any compromises on the backside or underside, those perhaps are not quite as good because of the access. And it can be an absolute nightmare. You can spend hours hanging stuff in the booth. So that's 2-pack epoxy loaded up in the gun. Everything's clean. Let's go. So one of the many advantages of using a 2-pack epoxy as your foundation, which is what we do on all our paintwork, is that you can treat aluminium and mild steel with the same coating and have great success with all of it. So now I've got this all in epoxy. I'm going to let this gas off for a bit. I will turn the booth back on, draw some heat through, warm it up. That gets rid of all the solvent, gives the chemical time to react. And once that's gone off enough, we can hit that with the 2K Raptor. Well, there we go. That was a bit of a marathon session in the booth, but it is well worth the hours. Look at that. That perfect texture that we can get with Raptor. I actually went with two sort of textures on this. With the dash components, these dash clusters, I actually dropped back a little bit more. So that's basically pulling back with the gun and getting a slightly drier coat on there. And that's worked out lovely. So that's got a slightly more matte and gravelly appearance, whereas these engine bay pieces are it's very slight difference, and these wheel arch pieces, they're slightly more flowed, if that makes sense. The texture's slightly less gravelly, less stand up to it. I think that wraps up today's video. Now we'll move forward in the next one to refitting all this lovely stuff. Thanks for watching. See you next time.